You ever wonder what makes a video game, great? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look past the shiny graphics and epic stories to really dig into the hidden craft of game design. You know that feeling when you're just completely lost in a game, so totally absorbed that you kind of forget everything else? And maybe for a second you stop and think, how did they do that? How did a team of people create something that feels so engaging, so perfectly balanced, so just fun? Well, the secret isn't some kind of magical formula or a random spark of genius. Nope. It's a disciplined, really thoughtful, and honestly, a fascinating process. It's a craft. All right, so how are we going to unpack all this? First, we'll start with the big picture, what game design actually is. Then we'll dive into the single most important philosophy for any designer. After that, we'll take a game apart to see its core components, walk through the creative process from start to finish, and wrap up by meeting the team that makes it all happen. Okay, first things first, let's tackle that big question. What exactly is game design? You hear people talk about this all the time, and it usually falls into one of two camps. Some people see it as pure art, just unrestrained imagination. And then you have others who see it as a type of engineering, just a series of logical problems to solve. But honestly, neither of those views really tells the whole story. But here's the thing that really clicks it all into place. Game design is a craft. A great analogy is cinematography in film. It's not just about making a pretty picture, and it's not just about the camera working correctly. It's about combining those artistic, aesthetic choices with the technical, functional parts to create something, well, elegant, and most importantly, something that's truly entertaining. Okay, so if the whole point is to be entertaining, there is one philosophy, one core idea that guides absolutely everything else in modern game design. And it all starts with the player. This whole player-centric approach really boils down to two simple but super powerful duties. First, obviously, is the duty to entertain. The game's gotta be fun. But the second one is even more important, the duty to empathize. Because you can't really entertain someone if you don't understand them. And that duty to empathize, that brings us to one of the biggest traps that new designers fall into. It's this idea that, well, I think this is fun, so everyone will. That is a seriously dangerous assumption. You have to remember, the audience for games is huge and incredibly diverse. A real pro learns to design for what their audience likes, not just for themselves. So it all comes down to this single, crucial rule you have to burn into your brain. Let's say it together. You are not your player. You have to step outside of yourself and design for them. Now, the second big misconception, this one's a holdover from the old arcade days. Remember those? Those games were often designed to be brutally hard, just to get you to put another quarter in. That created this adversarial mindset where the designer's job was to beat the player. That is just fundamentally the wrong way to think about it today. And that brings us to our second big design rule. It's a total shift in mindset. The player is not your enemy. They're your guest. You've invited them into this world you've built, and your job is to make sure they have a fair, challenging, and awesome time. Okay, so we've got the philosophy down. It's all about the player. But what are the actual, building blocks of a game? Let's take one apart and see what's inside. Think of it like this. At its very core, a game is just a conversation. You, the player, interact with the game through its user interface. That interface is showing you what's happening based on the game's core mechanics, its rules. The rules create a result, the interface shows it to you, you react, and that loop just keeps on going. So let's dig into those two components. The core mechanics are the absolute soul of the game. They are the rules, the math, the physics that dictate everything. How high can your character jump? How much damage does a sword do? That's all mechanics. The user interface, or UI, is everything else. It's how the game communicates those mechanics to you. Your health bar, the minimap, the sound of a laser blast, that's all UI. But here's the thing. A good game doesn't just dump all of this on you at once, right? It's structured. It uses what designers call gameplay modes. The best example is a racing game. When you're actually driving the car on the track, that's one gameplay mode. But when you're back in the garage, upgrading parts, looking at menus, that's a completely different mode with its own UI and its own actions. So we've got the philosophy, we've got the parts, but how do they all come together? How do you actually build a game? From that first little spark of an idea all the way to a finished product.
Well, that journey usually breaks down into three big stages. First, you have the concept stage, where you lay down the foundation. Then comes elaboration, which is where you build everything out. And finally, you get to tuning, where you polish it all till it shines.
Let's break that down. In the concept phase, you're setting the foundation, the really big stuff, like who your audience is, and those decisions are permanent. Then you move into elaboration, where you add details, you build prototypes, and you test, test, test. Eventually, you hit what the industry calls feature lock, and that's a key moment. It means no more new stuff. From that point on, it's all about tuning, making thousands of tiny tweaks that make the game feel just right. And of course, nobody does all this alone. Game design is a team sport. It takes a whole crew of specialists, these architects of play, to bring a modern game to life. At the top, you've got the lead designer. Think of them as the director of the movie. It's their job to hold the entire game's vision in their head and make sure every single piece, from the story to the systems, all fits together perfectly to serve the player. Next up, you have the mechanics designer. These are they're the architects of fun. They're the ones deep in the spreadsheets and the data, figuring out the math that makes a game feel fair and exciting. They build the engine that makes the fun possible. And finally, you have the level designer. Their job is to take all those amazing systems and rules that the mechanics designer built and actually construct the world you play in. They're the ones building the maps, placing the enemies, and designing the puzzles. If mechanics are the ingredients, the level designer is the chef. So there you have it. It's not some kind of magic, right? It's a craft, a discipline that blends art with engineering, all guided by empathy. It's about a clear process and a team of specialists working together. So now you know the fundamentals. The only question left is, what world will you build for your player?